Look to this day, for it is life, the very life of life. In its brief course lie all the verities and realities of your existence. The bliss of growth, the glory of action, the splendor of beauty. For yesterday is but a dream, and tomorrow is only a vision. But today, well lived, makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Look well, therefore, to this day.
Let's sing. I invite you to rise if your body lets you. Keep your heart wide open, though the waves want to push you around. You've got to keep your heart wide open till your faith brings you back to solid ground. Keep your arms wide open, though the waves want to push you around. You've got to keep your arms wide open till your faith brings you back to solid ground. Keep your eyes wide open, though the waves want to push you around. You've got to keep your eyes wide open till your faith brings you back to solid ground. Keep your love wide open, though the waves want to push you around. You've got to keep your love wide open till your faith brings you back to solid ground. Keep your heart wide open, though the waves want to push you around. You've got to keep your heart wide open till your faith brings you back to solid ground. So welcome to the Unitarian Church. My name is Nathan. I'm one of your ministers. We have a lot of announcements. Online folks, we're glad you're with us. Here are the things coming up. This Thursday, the 29th, is our last cottage meeting. So if you have not been to it, we're doing a whole strategic planning process. If you have not been to a cottage meeting, we are listing this as the all hands on deck, as many people as possible cottage meeting. We really can't do it with more than 10 people, so we're bringing in all of the people who've been trained to facilitate, all of them, so that we can then split you up in this one final cottage meeting. So if you have not been a part of this process, whether you're a member or not, and you would like to be a part, we would love for you to be it. So it's this Thursday at 6:30. When is it? Oh, that was so... It's this Thursday. It's exciting. Good. Okay. The other things for you to know. Great start to this sentence. June 1st is the start of hurricane season. So we have a disaster response team here at the church, and we would like for all of you to check in with that disaster response team. They'll have a table set up. Eventually, they're going to send out a survey. The survey is really so they can know who's willing to make phone calls, who has certain skills like owning a chainsaw or knowing how to help people if things happen. This is not a, we need to talk to you all the time. This is a, as we prep for hurricane season, we just need to know sort of who we are and what we have. Does that make sense? So we have that. The other things for you to know coming up during middle hour today, we have the parent support group for parenting in tumultuous times in room 5. We have an intro to the church in room 6, and we have the social justice sub-team on climate in room 7. Then on the 31st will be the Gay Men's Chorus. It's not an official ministry of the church, but they've been here for as many years as I can count. So that is the 31st. And then on the 1st is Reverend Chris's last Sunday preaching to us, or with us. And then the 8th is our congregation saying goodbye to him. And then he's going to spend the rest of the month, some of it at General Assembly, and some of it is just packing up and moving. But so the 1st is his last Sunday preaching, and then the 8th is our last Sunday, basically telling him thank you, goodbye, and here's where we're going from here. Does that make sense? All right. There's a lot going on. I'm glad you're with us on this Memorial Day.
Morning, y'all. You've broke the DRE. Let's try again. Good morning, y'all. Good morning. It's mine to bring you the lesson this morning. As with so many lessons, this is a true story, but it is not a true story. It's a story from the Sufi wisdom tradition, and as I tell it, I'd like you to listen and see if you can find the places in the story that are true for you. The little stream called to the sea. The little stream began deep inside the earth, quietly resting in a giant pool of water, listening to the call of the sea. The call was faint at first, and then grew so strong it was almost irresistible, pulling the little stream through rocks and crevices until it burst through the ground to see the sunlight and the giant open sky. The little stream was just a trickle at first, but soon it became bigger and stronger, changing into a brook rushing through fields and meadows and over rocks, growing bigger and stronger as it answered the call to the sea. Sometimes it took the form of a giant, thundering waterfall, and sometimes a deep, calm lake. But always the little stream heard the call to the sea. On the plains, it spread out into wide, shallow rivulets, meandering slowly in the hot sun, until the little stream reached the end of the plains and the edge of the desert. It pooled into a brackish mud hole with nowhere to go. Oh no, thought the little stream. Now I'll never reach the sea. After what seemed like a very long while, the wind whispered, I will carry you to the sea, little stream. How? Scoffed the stream. You are only made of air. I can carry you on a breeze, but you must be very brave. You must let go of yourself and change. I've changed many times, said the stream. But this will be different, said the wind. The little stream paused, but deep within, the call of the sea was still so strong. The little stream sighed, let go, and the wind picked it up, molecule by molecule, swirling up into the sky. The wind picked up molecules from the dew in the oases, the water in the ponds, all the streams, nearby and far away. The wind lifted all the molecules up into the sky together. The view was incredible. The little stream that had been had never imagined anything like it. The wind swirled all the molecules together into towering clouds. The little stream that had been saw millions of other molecules, all sparkling in the light. It saw that they were all beautiful from the inside out, and none of them were alone. The wind and the sun swirled all the molecules into clouds of sparkling colors as they swept across the desert sky together, answering the call of the sea. As they came closer to the sea, the little stream discovered its molecules felt very heavy and gathered into raindrops. Plip, plop, plip, plop, plippity, ploppity, plippity, plippity, ploppity, ploppity, plinking, drumming, pounding, and rushing. The rain poured into the sea, whooshing and splashing and roaring. The waves pushed the little stream to and fro and pulled it forward, and the currents carried it far offshore. The little stream had answered the call of the sea, and it was content.
And would you join me in this morning's prayer and reflection? The God that we know when we see hope and memory and forgiveness, that great mystery named and unnamed for as long and probably beyond there being people. Whatever it is that keeps you going, be with us on this day. And hold all of us who are longing to remember someone who has been lost. Help all of us to stay grounded on this earth. Help us to remember continued anniversaries, this week in particular of our own American Unitarian Association, and also the 100th anniversary of the birth of Malcolm X. Help us to remember all of the ideals that we have failed to live up to as individuals and as a society. Help us to remember all of the ways we wish we could be better. And help us to be held in a loving embrace. May we remember there is nothing that puts us outside of love. Help us to know that the world is better because we are here. May you know peace. May you know love. Amen. Today we have two cards. One, and these are in the reception area. One is for Maida Owen's sister, Charlotte, who is recovering after a surgery, and the other is for our own David Kopeska Merkel, who is in the hospital awaiting surgery. And we have two memorial services coming up. This Saturday at 9:30 will be Penny Maldonado's service, and then on the following Friday will be at 10:30 will be Bruce Blaney's service. So just mark both of those coming up. This ritual we have is open to everybody, visitor and member alike. Online, we invite you to type into the chat your stones, and we invite those who wish to come forward either along the west or the east wall and take a stone and place it in the chalice bowl. We now invite those who wish to come forward as we place stones. And we say together, with hope to make this a better world, we light this flame. Its light is the symbol of the power of love.
From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of hope and faith arise. Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung, through every land, by every tongue.
It was 1865. The parade was attended by around 10,000 free and recently freed African Americans in Charleston. These men and women were weary from years of military attacks on their city. Most of the white population had fled months earlier. The site of the celebration was the Washington Race Course, which had been converted into a prison with 260 Union soldiers buried in the middle of the race course. The racetrack in those days was a symbol of Southern wealth. After the war ended, some African Americans entered the site, exhumed the bodies, and buried them in clean, individual graves. Because they didn't know their names, these graves lay unmarked. They built a white fence around the burial, making it a graveyard. In big letters over the front was painted in the words, "Martyrs of the Racecourse." Once their work was done, there was a large parade consisting of two floats, one depicting a mock slave auction and the other a coffin titled "The Burial of Slavery." They marched in a circle around the racecourse. An all-black children's chorus led the procession, singing John Brown's "Body" and "America the Beautiful." They were followed by thousands of men and women and troops. There were 5 different preachers and people reading from scriptures as they performed essentially a large-scale funeral. Afterwards, many of the parade goers sat on blankets in the outfield and enjoyed a picnic.
How many of you knew that as the origin of Memorial Day? Oh, look at us, an educating church. It's not surprising that this story has been intentionally muddled and sugar-coated into that sort of blanket patriotic sentimentality that it is today. There are actually, I think, 2 or 3 different origins of Memorial Day, but that professor is a professor at Yale who's done a lot of research. This is the one that he lays claim to. As a reminder that Veterans Day honors veterans, but Memorial Day is a day that we've decided honors those who died in the military. And while we are not going to spend a lot of time on that in particular, I thought today would be a good Sunday to do kind of our annual Death Talk Sunday, which is not as bad as you think. Today I actually have a logistical goal for you. At the end of the service, I would like for you to have some idea what to expect logistically towards the end of someone's life, and I would like for you to have some idea for how to start the planning for your own memorial service. Now, I know that death can be an uncomfortable topic for some. For some of you, it's something you're intentionally avoiding. Others, you just don't have the capacity because you're in one of those waves where it feels like death is all around you. Comfort with death did not come easily to me. I cannot all promise you I am comfortable with my own mortality. I'm not sure I'm ready for death. Maybe no one ever is. But my comfort talking about the topic comes from my experience of being with so many of you over the years. I still remember the first day I realized that ministry involved death. I was at an intensive class that I took in seminary. It was on how to do pastoral care. One of the afternoons we met in Meadville's large classroom. This is back when we were on the campus of the University of Chicago, and the room looked like something out of Harry Potter. It was intricately carved wood everywhere. There was a big old fireplace. I don't believe anyone was smoking cigars in giant leather chairs, but that's what the room felt like. 2 hospice nurses were taking the afternoon to teach us. And they handed out this document called the 5 Wishes. Does anyone have that filled out already? Good for you. If you do not, I have extra copies that I can give you. This is a document that walks you through what you wish will happen to you at the end of your life. Do you want extraordinary means to keep you alive? Do you want to have a feeding tube? Would you like to have intensive chemo if that will lengthen your life at the expense of you being comfortable for a few extra weeks or months? I would also encourage you, whether you fill one out or not, to talk to your loved ones about what you want to happen to you before and after you die. And do it now when the stakes and emotions aren't as high. Like, do it when you don't have any risk of that coming up, in other words. Anyway, so here I am in this room that probably hundreds of my ancestral colleagues sat in as well, with me hearing about in-depth pastoral care for death. I was about 29, maybe 30 at the time. Other than a few sudden deaths of friends and the death of a great-great-aunt, I had never experienced anything they talked about in that class. I was smart enough to keep my mouth shut, but there was a lot of me that wanted to lean over to one of my classmates and whisper to them, "Do we really need to know this much about death in the ministry?" It is, as I said earlier, it is okay to be uncomfortable about death. It is okay for the topic to maybe give you anxiety. Just as it is okay to be sore after surgery, I would still recommend you go through the physical therapy as a part of your recovery. Because here's the thing that I've learned about seeing so many deaths in this congregation. There is a certain amount of work that every single person has attached to their life and to their death. If you are unable or unwilling to do that work of your own death, then someone else will have to do it for you. So if you are not able to think about where you want to be scattered or buried, someone else has to guess where you want that to happen. If you are not able to think about what you want to happen if you were hospitalized and you may be terminal, someone else is going to have to make that decision for you. So there's a certain amount of work that has to be done, and I would encourage you to do the hard work yourself so that someone else doesn't have to do it. All of this is to say, I encourage that you will stay engaged in this topic. So part 2, I will go through kind of the logistics of death. This is the notepad, take notes kind of thing, not because I have anything really interesting to say for that one, but because I go through a lot of the logistics that our society doesn't talk about. And then part 3 will go more into the theological aspects of death. which somehow transitions into the offering, which I do not know how to do except to say that this is a good church and we do good works. And the last 3 months, we just signed the shared offering checks, and they ranged from about $700 to about, I think, $1,200 for each of those months. This whole month, we are sharing with the Louisiana Trans Advocates, because right now in this state and in this country, if there's not one group that is getting more targeted, it is trans people. These are folks who are doing advocacy here in Louisiana, and it is good for them to know that this church is here to support them. So with that, I will ask you to give very generously, as this morning's offering is gratefully given and received.
Without the death of stars, there would be no planets and no life. Without the death of creatures, there would be no evolution. Without the death of elders, there would be no room for children. Without the death of fetal cells, we would all be spheres. Without the death of plants and animals, there would be no food. Without the death of old ways of thinking, there would be no room for the new. Without death, there would be no ancestors. Without death, time would not be precious. What then are the gifts of death? The gifts of death are Mars and Mercury, Saturn and Earth. The gifts of death are the atoms of stardust within our bodies. The gifts of death are the splendors of shape and form and color. The gifts of death are diversity, the immense journey of life. The gifts of death are food, the sustenance of life. The gifts of death are seeing, hearing, feeling, deeply feeling. The gifts of death are the urgency to act, the desire to be and become. The gifts of death are joy and sorrow, laughter and tears. The gifts of death are lives that are fully and exuberantly lived, then graciously and gratefully given up for now and forevermore. Please remain seated for this next hymn.
Abide with me, fast falls the eventide. The darkness deepens, still with me abide. When other helpers fail and comforts flee, help of the helpless, oh, abide with me. Swift to its close ebbs out life's little day. Earth's joys grow dim, its pass away. Change and decay in all around I see. O thou who changes not, abide with me. I fear no foe, with thee at hand to bless. Ills have no weight, and tears no bitterness. Where is death's sting? Where, grave, thy victory? I triumph still if thou abide with me.
That last reading was from Michael Dowd. He was a minister. He actually came to this church about a year and a half ago, and then unexpectedly he died of a heart attack about 6 months after he was here. He's got a few books out about how science and religion don't need to be enemies, that they actually build on each other. So let's get to the logistics. I'm going to talk about this in 3 parts. First is the funeral home. Second is the memorial. And third is not disappearing. Most deaths are expected. We tend to think of all death as sudden or accidental, but homicide, cardiac event, suicide, accidents, these are the less common forms of death. Most memorial services that I do, most of the deaths that I see in this church, have some amount of expectation with them. Usually it's people in hospice or people who are knowledgeable about their decline. And I tell you this to say that most people have an opportunity to do reconciliation and to have a plan as death comes closer. But we live in a world where all of death is expected to be sudden. If we are able to do our work before the time comes, usually we can leave people with somewhat of a roadmap for what to do after you die, both logistically and emotionally and even spiritually. What I recommend is to have these conversations with the people you love the most. Have a will, but do not put your funeral home or memorial service plans in that will. Sometimes the will gets tied up in legal stuff, and so it's good to not have that there. All you have to do is to tell the person who's going to be in charge of the decision-making after you die what you want. Do you want to be buried? Do you want, that is the most expensive of the options. Do you want a cremation? That is cheaper, but not the most environmentally friendly option. Do you want your body donated to science? Usually that means all expenses are covered, and it takes about 2 years for the family to get your ashes back. Talk to your loved ones about what is important for you, important to you about what am I trying to say here? Talk to your loved ones about what is important to have and not to have in your memorial or your burial or your scattering. Tell them about the music you like, the stories about yourself you like. Show them photos of yourself that make you happy. Tell them why they are important to you. Even more logistics, I would encourage you to think of a funeral home like a used car dealership. They may seem like they are giving you a good deal, but they are trying to make a profit. Here are my funeral home tips and tricks from now 12 years as your minister. Most white funeral homes are owned by one of 2 major national corporations. It is possible this is true for black funeral homes as well. I am just not aware either way. Typically, I tell someone a cremation should cost you about $3,000 if you do nothing else. I have heard of some funeral homes now charging up to $6,000, and I know of one that charges $1,500. A burial can run you into the tens of thousands of dollars. Often they will pull every kind of trick that the car dealer will pull to try to sell you a package. These include, but are not limited to, having more people than you in the room, having packages that are just barely slightly more expensive than the base package, using kind of manipulative sales tactics. When they try to sell you a casket, they will always show you the most expensive and the prettiest. They never have full versions of the cheapest one for you to see. And they go out of their way to have a little bit of hint at shame if you don't buy the most expensive option. Their guest books run, this is just a book for people to sign their name in, about $75. When you get the invoice, when you're at the funeral home, question every single line. Ask them about it. Why is this here? What am I getting by paying for this? They also love to charge from embalming when you don't need to have that. They can drop thousands of dollars off of that if you are really pushy, which they don't expect because they know that you are grieving. Funeral home directors have a powerful lobby in Louisiana. A few years ago, some monks, they wanted to sell their own caskets, and they weren't allowed. They brought a case all the way to the Supreme Court, and the monks won. So you can now buy caskets from people other than funeral homes. I believe Costco even sells caskets. I cannot vouch for the quality of a Costco casket, just if you were wondering. In Louisiana, you are also required to buy a case with a casket. This is a cement that goes in the ground if you are interring ashes or burying a coffin. Both go in a case. There are not any official options for green burials in Louisiana. That is where you are buried without a coffin or a case, and just like a tree is planted over you. There is a place in New Orleans that I've heard rumored does that. I cannot vouch that they do it or not. I feel like it's illegal here, but they just kind of ignored the rules, but I don't know that. And maybe saying that one on the internet is not the best, but if you would like to know more about it, talk to me and we can figure that out. There is also a group of people at the church who are looking at buying a plot of land to convert into a green burial place. So if you want to know more about that, actually there's in the reception area, there's a poster board where you can get more information on that. I did hear one funeral home agree to bury someone with the case upside down over the casket without the lid so that the casket could touch the soil, which technically is an expensive version of a green burial. My usual advice after a death is to go slow. Your body physiologically will feel like there is a crisis. You have lowered brain capacity, your heart beats faster, your muscles are more tense, you breathe more shallowly, you don't have as much of an appetite. Also, if it is a sudden death, typically those feelings are even more amplified, and it takes probably about 2 years to even come out of the fog for something like that. When you were in the earlier stages of grief, your brain is telling your body there is a threat and that you need to hurry up and do something to stop feeling these feelings. But the only thing that makes grief go away is time. I tend to think of grief as like a giant canvas laying on top of you. Every ritual and event that you do after a death is like another sort of tent pole holding up that canvas. And you don't want to use all of them at once, just so you have more available later. My usual funeral home advice is to get in and out as quickly as possible. You can always go back to a funeral home later to plan a service or get extra accommodations. In the same way you shouldn't go to a grocery store when you're hungry, a grieving person at a funeral home can cost you thousands and thousands of dollars. One of the places they are not charging you a lot is with the death certificates. Those are about $10. It's good to get like 10 to 15, maybe 20 of those. You need them for all sorts of weird things you may not expect. car loans, insurance, mortgage, retirement. There are so many things you may need one for. It's better to have extra than to have to go back and get more. They also usually don't upcharge you to help with the obituary that goes in the paper, but I cannot be certain about that for every funeral home. You can also negotiate with a funeral home. You can even demand they move your loved one's body to a different funeral home if they are not treating you right. One more thing that is good to think about now. If you are going to have a loved one cremated, consider going to it. Whenever I mention this to a grieving family, they are almost always, they seem shocked and like resistant and afraid to do it. I have gone with many people, and I've never had someone tell me they regret going and doing it. There is no right way to grieve. You're not supposed to do it. You're not supposed to not do it. But it may be something that helps you on that path. As it relates to the memorial service, my advice is to take time. There is no need to rush it. 3 months is kind of the sweet spot. You're in a different stage of grief than you are right after the death. Waiting means that 1, more people can plan and come. 2, the memorial service can really tell a good story. And 3, it can give you some of the nourishment you may need to make it through this next chapter of grief in profound ways. You should also know that the time I worry the most about you as a grieving congregant is after the memorial service, when the casseroles have stopped coming in, when everyone else is over it and they don't understand why you're not. Does that make sense? So that's when I really worry about the sort of loneliness of it. When planning a service, one of the ministers usually meets with the family, usually in our office. We ask you to tell us stories of the person's life. We ask you questions, and then we help you craft the service. And remember, the goal of the memorial is not perfection or completion. It is just to let us think about that person collectively for an hour. All you need to do is to have an idea of who you want to speak, who you do not want to speak, what music and readings the person liked. While you're grieving, you will have a lot of doing energy. I would encourage you to channel that into sorting through pictures. Looking at pictures and planning the service can help with the grieving process. When you think about your own memorial, there are 2 things to think about. One is, what's the music, the readings, the photos you really want for the service? Actually have a folder where if you're ever at either another memorial or you're at a church service or you just read a poem or something, put it in the folder and title it Memorial Service. And then when it's time for your memorial, your loved ones can look through that folder and they'll have so many options that they are guaranteed to have some of the things from that folder in the service. And the second is to think about the stories you want people to tell about you after you die. One of the advantages, or maybe disadvantages, of being a minister and being in all of these memorial counseling sessions is I am well aware and always think about it whenever I am failing as a parent or a partner or a minister or a friend. How you act now will show up in your memorial. Invest in living the loving and generous life you want to lead now makes a better memorial experience for those you love. So to say it another way, every time I yell at my kids, I go, uh-oh, that's probably a story they're going to tell. And it's not entirely true. Like, our goal is never to just let all of the bad stuff, well, anyway. But I think about that a lot. You know, I did a memorial for someone who was a really bad driver, and those kids talked about it at length. Didn't show up in the memorial, but he was aggressive, and he was honked his horn a lot, things like that. Also, the last thing on logistics is don't disappear. Some people are not emotionally able to handle the terminal nature of someone they love, or they are afraid of saying or doing the wrong thing, so they just don't say or do anything. But from the perspective of the person who is dying, the people they thought they could rely on, some of them vanish. Stay with your loved ones. Stay engaged. It's okay to ask them about death or the diagnosis. Creating a narrative is how we process trauma and grief. Plus, because most people are going to avoid talking about it, so they will lose, or you will lose, the opportunity to process what is going on. Also, make sure you are not asking someone else who is grieving to process your grief. The last thing I will leave you with, I stole this from, I think it's the LA Times, but it's called the circles of grief. So at the very center is the most affected. So that would be a spouse, God forbid, a parent or a child. That's the inner circle. The next circle is the first circle of support. So if your parent died, the next circle of support would be your spouse or your close friends. And then the next circle of support is for your spouse or your close friends, and it goes out like that. And the rule is you support in and you dump out. So if you are the widow, you are allowed to dump to anybody you want, and no one is allowed to dump on you. If you are the child of a widow, you support or a sibling of a widow, you support in, and then you dump to your spouse or your friend, something like that. Does that make sense? So those are, and no one knows these are the official rules, but we've kind of all agreed as a society they're an official rule. So when you see someone who is like in the third ring out, dumping on someone in the inner circle, it feels wrong, and that's why. So I just wanted you to have that tool also.
Some evenings, after days when the world feels it has poured all of its despair into me, when I am awash with burdens that rest atop my body like a burlap of jostling shadows, I find a place to watch the sun set. I dig my feet into a soil that has rebirthed itself 1,000,000 times over. I listen to the sound of leaves as they decide whether or not it is time to descend from the branches. It is hard to describe the comfort one feels in sitting with something you trust will always be there, something you can count on to remain familiar when all else feels awry. How remarkable it is to know that so many have watched the same sun set before you. How the wind can carry pollen and drop it somewhere it has never been. How the leaves have always been the soil that then became the leaves again. How maybe we are not so different from the leaves. How maybe we are also always being reborn to be something more than we once were. How maybe that's what waking up each morning is. A reminder that we are born of the same atoms as every plant and every bird and mountain and ocean around us.
Let's sing our next hymn, If Your Body Lets You Rise.
When the waters are deep, friends carry me over. When I cry in my sleep, love, call me home. Time, ferry me down the river, friends carry safely over. Life, tend me on my journey. Love, call me home. When the waters are cold, friends, carry me over. When I'm losing my hold, love, call me home. Time, ferry me down the river. Friends, carry me safely over. Life, tend me on my journey. Love, call me home. When I cannot swim, friends, carry me over. Open your arms, take me in. Love, call me home. Time, ferry me down the river. Friends, carry me safely over. Life, tend me on my journey. Love, call me home. Take the gift that I bring. Friends, carry me over. Deep within me I sing. Love, call me home. Time, ferry me down the river. Friends, carry me safely over. Life, tend me on my journey. Love, call me home. Life offers a chance. Friends, carry me over. Time cannot top its dance. Love, call me home. Time, ferry me down the river. Friends, carry me safely over. Life, tend me on my journey. Love, call me home.
When I think about that first Memorial Day, it points to something unique about the human spirit. It doesn't matter how tough things are going to get, people will still be here. Those people that gathered at the racetrack, those people traumatized by this world and by slavery, they still found the energy and the time to exhume the bodies of those who fought for their freedom. They still found the time to make space for every person, even if their name was lost, to be honored and to be recognized after their death. And that's what I think about when I think of death. Every one of us came out of a mystery. Maybe it's nothingness. Maybe it's some great pool of water that we will return into. Maybe it's some great waiting room that we've left and we will eventually go back to. However you find helpful to describe that mystery, we all came out of it. None of us chose it for ourselves, and yet here we are. And within 100 years, give or take, all of us will return back to that mystery. Maybe it's that waiting room, maybe it is nothing, maybe it's getting reconfigured into other parts of living, maybe we are the leaves giving birth to new trees. If there is anything that I am sure of that my ministry has taught me, is that every single one of us, without exception, when you die, people notice. It is such a big deal that people none of us even know will help take care of us after our death. You may have heard me say this before, but it's still a very weird sentence. Our memorial services are one of the best evangelical tools that we have. How many of you have heard someone say they went to a memorial service at the Unitarian Church and they thought it was the most beautiful thing they'd ever been to? Okay, yeah, ooh, some of you. In fact, there is a local radio personality who when I was on his show, our minister emeritus said, I bet she's going to talk about the memorial service. He went to that church like 20 years ago, and he did. And if you listen to him, whenever our church comes up, he still talks about that memorial service. The reason is because it points to our theology. In the service, we are trying to get out of the way so that the person who died can shine through. Every reading, every piece of music, every story told comes with that loved one in mind. Every time I write a memorial service, I look at that script and it feels too short. A Sunday service is a good, solid, 3,000 to 4,000 words when you consider all of the elements, and that gets us to about an hour. When I hit print on the memorial service, it is 800 to 1,000 words. Every memorial service, without exception, when I sit on this chancel before we start, I do not see how it's not going to just be a 10-minute service. In every service, without exception, the people, the stories, the essence of the person brings that service to completion. They fill it out. And it doesn't matter if there are 400 people in the sanctuary or 5. And the theology that our memorials elicit is that you matter. And it matters that you matter in relationships to other people and in this time. We want you to be seen for the fullness of who you are. We do not want you to be defined as entirely perfect, nor should you ever be defined entirely by your failings or the pain you caused in this world. You deserve to be remembered as fully human and as a divine manifestation. And in these memorials, we make no promises about death or the afterlife. The simple fact is that none of us know. I want so much to tell the gathered congregation that everyone will be reunited again. I want to pull on those old universalist strings that say, rest assured, everyone is together in heaven at the end of life, so we better learn to get along here now. But belief is how we make sense of our experience. Because I have no experience of my own death, I do not know what I believe. The other reason I say I do not know what I believe, and the reason I do not make promises, is because of the weird things that happen at memorial services. I do not believe in ghosts. I do not believe that our loved ones visit us after death. And yet, a few weeks ago, during a memorial service, 3 different things fell out of this pulpit during the service. I've had once a thing fall out of the pulpit, never 3. Once I was doing a memorial service for a bird lover, or a scattering. The bird wouldn't stop talking for an entire hour that we were at that service. Once a swarm of bees showed up out here for the entire service and left afterwards. Once I was doing a scattering in New Orleans for someone who loved Mardi Gras, and a brass band showed up right in time for the scattering. Are these random coincidences? If you do enough memorial services, eventually something will happen and you can find the coincidence. Is the person reaching out in the afterlife? Is this the universe righting itself, using its own elemental forces to show grief? I don't know any of this. So at a memorial service, we do not make promises about what happens after death. The last thing for you to know is that something I was entirely unprepared for as I entered ministry. You see, the ministers are sort of a curator of the congregation. We are like your librarian. We hold your stories. We carry your stories with us. You have told me the things you're going through. You have told me about your addictions and your depression and your existential worry and your diagnoses and the death of a grandparent or a child or a sibling or a parent or a spouse or, God forbid, a child or a grandchild. You need to know that most of the people that you are sitting next to right now are suffering in one way or another, probably more profound than you could ever know. And still we go on. And still we live, still we survive, and over time, as the waves of grief get further and further apart, as the noise of death becomes sort of the refrigerator motor in the background of life, but it is always still there, we find ways to have joy and to celebrate. Because the reality of death and because of the spiritual maturity of those who are able to face it, there is less suffering and there is more joy in the world. And we as a people keep moving on. We keep growing and living and celebrating. And we never do this without the person we've lost. They become woven into who we are and what we do. Never underestimate how strong you are, how much you have gone through, and how amazing it is that all of us go through this together. Let's sing.
Here in reverence now we gather for the blessings we have known, with a pledge to one another that we journey not alone. Joy and sorrow make us wise, kin to all that lives and dies, calls us on, love calls us on. Words and deeds of those before us waken here to keep us strong. Blend our voices in the chorus of creation's living song. Courage bids us lift our eyes. Oh, the calls us on. Hope calls us on. Loyal guides in love and duty, lead us with a trusted light. Blessed are they whose inward beauty shows the path of truth and right. Honor is their earthly prize. By their work we realize faith's a song. Faith calls us on. We have shared a radiant hour, thus will it be, and the Spirit's gracious power dreamed of good that yet will be. Bright the path before us lies. Joyful pilgrims now we rise. Life calls us on. Life calls us on.
May the love which overcomes all differences, which heals all wounds, which puts to flight all fears, which reconciles all who are separated, be in us and among us now and always. Go in peace, go in love. Amen.